Hi, everybody. I'm Jules, and this is the first episode of Extend Explained Badly. Today, I will be introducing you to my newest toxic situationship, App Builder. Let's get into it. So, you want to build an Extend app, but you've opened App Builder for the first time and you're feeling not great. Stick with me. I think I can help you with that. By the end of this tutorial, I promise you will feel more empowered to jump back into App Builder and try again. So I'm going to be using this pink spotlight you see moving here to help guide you around the page as I explain things. So in this first lesson, we're just going to go over the basic layout. So we're just going to ignore this, okay? So that brings me to our first item in the layout. Over here in our top left corner, we have this components icon. This allows us to toggle that components panel open and close. And we're going to keep it closed because we don't want to deal with that right now. Then we have the search icon that allows us to search for anything inside of our app configuration. And then moving down to the bottom left corner, we have three icons that start with the keyboard shortcuts. If you are somebody who literally refuses to touch a mouse, this is for you. We have light mode, dark mode, and we have a user menu. This allows you to view your profile. You can sign into your tenants. When you sign into a tenant, it will give you this copy token button, which I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to keep in mind that that token is like a secret handshake later when you're troubleshooting that allows you to get tenant data without actually being in the tenant. Then you have links to the developer support portal and the ability to give feedback, and you can sign out of the entire developer site through here as well. Moving down to the bottom panel, we have four tabs here. We have validations. Validations is when you were to click the validate button up here in the top right, it will go through all of your code, all of your components, and it will make you aware of any sort of errors or warnings that you will want to pay attention to. Then we have build logs. What's a build? Okay, a build I like to think of as all of the things that you are putting into your app are going to get wrapped up into one pretty present that you get to deploy to your development tenant as one whole file, right? So that big present, that big file is your build, and it contains everything that you have done in App Builder to get this app up and alive. Then we have our debug logs. You can add logging into your pages and see your custom messages here. This helps you a lot with troubleshooting. And then we have our API logs. If you don't know what an API is, I like to think of it as like a waiter at a restaurant, right? The waiter comes to your table, takes your order, then they go back to the kitchen. They say, hey, she wants a burger with no cheese and extra pickles. They bring you back your burger with no cheese and extra pickles to your table. And the waiter is the API, right? It's just a acronym for sending and receiving data. So your app is most likely going to have API calls, right? So this is where you can see if they succeeded or if they failed and their URL path. And if you don't know what a successful API call is, then you probably have no idea why the response code says 200. Check the comments. I'm going to drop links to some of my favorite pages that I like to call the puzzle pieces that helped me figure out technology, right? So 200 is a successful response code. And so that'll be the HTTP response code link in the comments. Now we're going to move up into the top right. So let me just go to a page so we can see our other options, right? So the top right, we have these three buttons. We have validate, which we already went over, save to App Hub, and save and deploy. Save to App Hub is going to save all of your changes here in the developer site or extend console, whatever we're calling it. And save and deploy will do that same thing, except it will have the added functionality of allowing you to deploy your build to the development tenant. And so here you go. And then moving down here, this big area right here is where we build the look and feel of our page. If you want a text field or a fancy pie chart on your page, this is where we do it. So we have the ability to toggle to code mode or visual mode. You can use whichever. I did. Maybe I have issues, but I challenged myself to learn on code mode. And I do think that it helped me understand the UI of visual mode a lot better, but you can start wherever you feel comfortable. The visual mode has a lot of benefits, right? You can grab and drop your widgets around. Whoa, widgets. Jules, what are we talking about? Remember that text field or that fancy pie chart? You can add drop downs. These are all widgets. With all of them, you can easily change a widget to a different one in visual mode. So that is fun. And then we move on to the star of the show, app preview. Okay, app preview allows you to see the changes that you are making in your pages. You just make a change, you click this refresh button, and it will refresh so you can see if your changes worked or not. And then we have some extra items when we open app preview, right? Where you can pull your tenant data directly into your app preview through this manage data source icon. You have this friend named Page Inspector, and Page Inspector will help you see what your endpoints, your data sets look like, right? You can check your lines of code to see what it returns. Maybe none of that makes sense, but I promise you want to use Page Inspector. We didn't get along at first. Now it's a whole religion for me to use Page Inspector. Zoom out, zoom in, and then you can close out. We also have this little pencil icon. This is where you can put any sort of extra parameters from a URL. So comes in handy when you're building out business process pages. You need to test with a specific approval page. You'll want to put the events ID as a query parameter or route parameter so that you can see in app preview what that approval page looks like so you can make the changes you need to make to that change. So that concludes lesson 1 on the basic layout of App Builder. And now let's move into lesson 2 so that we can unpack all of this mess over here. See you there. Hey, welcome to lesson 2, where we unpack all of this trauma over here on the left side of the page. So this is your components panel, and it is basically all of the different things that you can add into your app. And we are going to start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. Okay, so if you were to click this plus icon at the top, it is just going to add a component. You will click whatever you want to add from the drop down. You can also add components by clicking the plus sign next to each component in the panel. Then we move into our app configurations. So we see here that we have an AMD and an SMD. With the AMD, this is where you can define your flows. What is a flow? Okay, I'm going to do a little drawing. Maybe that'll help. A flow is basically when you have more than one page that you want to go one right after the other as a user moves through the pages. So let's just start easy. We have 2 pages, and the first page is where the user is going to take a quiz. And the second page is where you want the user to be able to see the results of the quiz that they took. So when they click the OK button to submit their answers, it should automatically flow into page 2 to display their results. So that is flow definitions, and you would define them here in your AMD. Okay, and then we'll move down to the middle here. Task is basically all of your pages. You can manipulate their URLs if you need to through here. You can also add a page this way, and it will automatically show up into your task area on your AMD. And down here we have data providers. Okay, do you remember when we talked about APIs? Well, this is a list of the addresses for those APIs. Think of it like the restaurant we talked about. This time we're ordering from Uber Eats. I don't want to have to tell Uber Eats the address of the restaurant. I should just be able to say the name, and this allows us to do that. So here where I have it named Workday Common. I call on it in my page here under endpoints, and I just say, hey, it's that Workday Common data set that I want to pull from. Then we're going to move into our S&D. This is where you can add any languages that any users who might be accessing your app, what they might have set as their Workday default language or their preferred language. So you would want to add in all of those and any sort of authorization types that might be using the app as well, like single sign-on or an ISU. Now we go into attributes. I love attributes. I just started using them a lot more recently. What they do is they allow you to have one variable that goes into your tenants and you can specify per tenant what you want that variable to do. So different kinds of attributes you can add. You could add a string, a numeric, or Boolean, which means true or false. I decided to add a Boolean one called enable log, and this allows me to toggle logs on or off per tenant. Obviously, in production, I don't want my users' personal data flowing into the extend console logs, but if I'm troubleshooting something in Sandbox or implementation, then I might want to toggle my logs on as I troubleshoot so I can kind of see what's going on in the back end. Now we'll move into pages. So there are many different kinds of pages. You can have a hub page, a micro page. You can even build out approval pages for business processes or action pages. There's really, whatever your use case is, mixed with your creativity, you will be able to figure out which page you need to get the job done. You also can have view pages and edit pages, confirm pages. And remember, when you hit generate components, you can also have these types of pages generated that you can customize and edit afterwards. Moving right along down to page configurations. Okay, so we have this fun area down here and we notice that the first item says cards, but we're like, whoa, there is another cards down here. What's going on? Okay, so this cards up here is your page configurations cards. These are cards that you can put on the pages inside of your app. And it's super easy to build out. You have different options of different kinds of cards that you can put inside your app. Um, yeah, cards kind of, for me, keep things really aesthetically organized in apps. Reusable pods. So remember when we talked about widgets in the last lesson? Well, sometimes you want them set up the exact same way across pages. And wouldn't it be nice if the waiter knew your order without you having to explain it every time that you wanted extra pickles? I would just say, I'll have my usual, and that's kind of what a pod can do. I don't have to repeat myself. And now we have scripts. Scripts, I'll go more into depth in the Panic at the PMD episode, but no, it's not where actors read their lines. It's an area where you can define page variables and functions that you can use throughout that page. And just like the reusable pods, if you plan to use it across multiple pages, just slap it into here, call it into your page. That way you're only having to make any sort of changes in one area instead of across multiple pages. And then moving down to translations. So remember up at the SMD, we had added a bunch of different languages that our users speak. Well, when we go down to translations, if you have any sort of manual translation for these languages, you will add it into here, and then you can define what you want it to say. So you'll make a key. My key says take quiz title. And wherever I call on that key, I want it to display in whatever language the user has set as their default this translation. And so we did English and French Canada here. So I actually call on this key, take quiz title, in one of my pages. And I just call on it as presentation labels dot and then the key that we set up. And because my preferred default language in my tenant is English, I see this translation. If I had set it to French Canadian, it would give me the other translation for this page. So that's how translations work. And Moving down, we have task. Task, wherever you see this orange square that says model component, this means that these are components you're adding to your app that you would have to wait until the maintenance window for to see them in non-development tenants. And I think Workday does a really good job of kind of stopping that warning everywhere before you make a change to any model components. So about tasks. Tasks are, if you're already familiar with Workday, and then you're probably already familiar with using the search area up here at the top of the page. These are all tasks that you can do inside Workday. Well, you can actually create your own task for your Extend app that will take you directly into your app. You can define what page of the app you want the task to take them to. You can secure it. Well, you have to secure it to a security domain. And so that's, yeah. Then we have queries. Queries are like an API. It's another way to retrieve data. You I don't know if you've ever heard of SQL. WEQL is the Workday version of SQL. And pulling a query, it's kind of like defining, hey, give me this field and that field from this data set. And then let's order it in ascending order. And we can set a condition on it and we can set a limit on it. If you plan to use the same query across multiple pages, slap it into this area here, call on it. Same reason as you would do that for strips or pods. It's just so that you're only making changes in one place. Then we'll move down to the other cards, not a page configuration. Use is where you can actually put cards on the homepage of your tenants. You can throw it into hubs, like native Workday hubs. You can throw it into dashboards, and you would build it out here, and you actually get to look at it in app preview. I just did a really, really simple, basic one, but you can get really creative with how your cards look. And then we have card tenant settings. You will tie this to your home and hub cards. So here you have a drop down for any cards you might have created, and you will tie the settings to that card. Then moving down to profile groups. Okay, this is a new feature and it's really cool. This basically allows you to add task reports from your Extend app directly into native Workday profiles. So if you click this drop down, you can see a whole list of profiles that are eligible for this feature. I chose to use worker profile, and I can show you what that looks like as well. So I'm Jacqueline. I'm going to go into my profile. Boom, I see keyboard persona right here in the worker profile. We are out here healing trust issues as we go because it did exactly what it said it was going to do. Okay, moving down to security domains. So just like domains inside of native Workday, you can build out your own security domains for your Extend app. And it is highly recommended that you use the same nomenclature that Workday uses for their standard domains. So you can differentiate between what users can do inside each security domain based on the groups that you add into them. So you could do, manage, view, or report, and then tie your components to the correlating security domain. Also, don't sleep on this enabled for page security. This button right here, you can actually lock down who is allowed to even open those pages, which is really cool because it allows you to get even more granular with security. Attachments. This is like a business object, but for files and documents, and photos that users might be uploading into your Extend app. So if a user is wanting to upload a photo of their keyboard in this app specifically, it would get housed into the attachment business objects. And then the next one is literally business objects. So if you do any sort of reporting, then you're familiar with having to play with groups of data and pulling from different data sets. Well, business object is like the data set for your app. And you can define any fields that you want to live in that data set. You can combine 2 or 3 fields together to create one new field. And you can even build relationships between your Extend app fields and Workday fields. So next is business processes. If you want a user to be able to set up an approval step on your business process. This is where you enable that capability. You can even do sendbacks and cancellations. Um, it's just like it works and it looks just like the native business processes. It's really cool what you can do. You can build out action steps. You can build out the pages. What is an approval page going to look like? And it will actually be in, the approver's inbox. You can tie your extend business process as like a sub process inside of one of Workday's native parent business processes, which is really cool because this allows you to design different pages or task items that users might have in a process that already exists in Workday. Okay, next is reports. Do you want to get a little emo with me right now? So these reports are okay or whatever, but they only show fields from your app objects. So there's no calc fields, there's no related business object fields. The silver lining is they act as standard reports in your tenant, and they deploy with your app, so they'll automatically show up inside your app as a report, and you didn't have to build it. But if you're like, I need more, give me more, just opt for a custom report and add your app fields into that. Orchestrations, we're not going to go in this today. We're just not doing it. I think that orchestrations deserves an episode all of her own. But if you were to add any sort of integrations into your Extend app, you can add them in through here. Then we have assets, and right now we're only allowed to upload images as assets, and they can be used for cards. No differentiation between the page configuration card or the home and hub card. I just did a little talking keyboard, and I slapped it onto my home and hub card, and I was able to add it right here in this drop down super easy because I had added it into my assets. So this testing area is where you can throw any mock data or dummy data. To play with that, if you don't want to play with the tenant data, this allows you to force failures or force success loads, so you can kind of see what happens. And yeah, that was a lot, and I hope you can breathe a little easier now that we got through all of that. The next bit of this tutorial, we'll jump into the tenant and do a little app demo to kind of see how it all plays together, how it looks and feels in the tenant. So I'll see you in the demo.
4 hours later.
So now that we have deep dived all of the different items that we have in App Builder, now it's time to take a look at a little tiny baby app demo to see how it all comes together. So you are finished in App Builder, you have deployed it to your development tenant. Now what, right? So over here in the top left, we have our menu, and you're going to see an item called Workday Extend App Manager. And if it's not there, then just add it through this add option. You're going to click into App Manager. And this is where you will see all of your apps, and you will have these two options, configure or view app. We want to configure so we can kind of get things working in our tenant the way we want it to work. So remember we talked about attributes and how they were tenant specific? Well, this is where we can define in each tenant what we want that attribute to do. So remember I had this true false field for enable log. And yes, in my development tenant, I want it to be set to true, which is why this checkbox is checked. And I want it to be true for my development environment. And remember we had business processes and all of these other items and elements that we added into our App Builder. This is where we can configure them, right? The profile groups. I click this configure button. That's how I finished out the process of getting it onto worker profile. We have our business object. We have our whole laid out data set with URLs. These URLs will help you in that data provider area of your AMD, also in your endpoints and your pages to retrieve the data from your app's business objects. So this is App Manager. It's just your last configuration step before your app is up and rolling. Okay, so we are actually going to sign in as my friend Chris Dragonsbane. And if you are an Extend expert watching this tutorial, then you'll probably have an idea of who I am picking on here. But Chris logs into Workday And he sees this new home and hub card on his home page, and he's curious. He wants to know what his keyboard is saying about him, so he's going to click into it. And here we have a hub page with a page configuration card on it. We have a footer, but not only is it a footer, it is the reusable pod footer because I also have it on another page. And if I ever wanted to make changes to this footer, I would only have to make it in that reusable pod area. So we're going to click into the link on this page configuration card. And now we have a micro page. And this is, remember where we talked about translations, because Chris's preferred default language is English, he is seeing the what your keyboard says about you instead of the French Canadian version. We have a text widget and we have a drop-down widget on this page. So in his drop-down, he sees all of the different keyboard options. I have confirmed separately that Chris uses a Microsoft wireless keyboard. And this is the first page in our flow. Remember, we talked about flow definitions in the AMD. Okay, well, when we click see your results, the flow should bring us to the second page, which should show him his keyboard persona. So we are going to click see your results. And here you have it. Chris is probably a wizard and has strong opinions about the use of VAR and apps and is probably cringing over my use of the alphabet as IDs instead of something that will make more sense to me later. That is so very Chris. Anyone who knows him would agree. And so what we are going to do is, remember we talked about the business object and how we can take data that your users put into your app and we can house them somewhere into a data set, right? So when he clicks OK, it is going to take his keyboard persona and it is going to save it into our app's business object, which we later call on in this page. And since I have re-recorded myself several times, there's a whole bunch of keyboard personas in here, but this is how we can basically save that data into the business object and call on it in other pages of our app. So that's that. I hope this helped make Extend less scary. And now maybe you might feel empowered to jump back into App Builder, play around, do some weird stuff. I don't know, just have fun with it. And seriously, like, thank you for watching my tutorial. This has been a lot of fun. So I hope you guys stay with me.